Well, hello, everybody. Today is a very special episode. It's episode number 30. Woohoo! And it's also special because we're welcoming a dear friend, Magdy Abdel-Malik, who is a founder and CEO of Coestio, which is a management consulting company that focuses on open innovation. And Magdy is also an executive in residence at Princeton University. So a very exciting guest. And Magdy, what's on your mind?
Thanks, Elena, for the introduction. That's a big question. What is in my mind? Um, Let me see. As somebody grow up in R&D, I always think how to make it better. And the things in my mind today is how to transfer R&D into an effective innovation generator. How to enable R&D to attract innovation providers.
Yeah.
How,
Maggie,
how
go ahead.
how to empower R&D to become the champion of accelerated growth initiative. Sorry, Jeff. Go
No,
ahead.
I was just going to jump in and say, this episode is about open innovation. I'm wondering, I think what you're talking about makes a ton of sense. Like, how do you get R&D to really be the driver of innovation? I've certainly seen that in my experience. But can you talk a little bit, kind of give a brief definition of what is open innovation so that, the audience understands, kind of
Of course.
what we're talking about?
Of course. All what I just said now, I find open innovation model is the tool to make these things I just mentioned happen.
Right.
So there are correlation with what I said, how to make it happen is adopting open innovation model
Absolutely.
as a tool. So what is open innovation? The coin about the name coined in 2003 by Professor Chesborough from Harvard University. And since that time, the word turned from being a buzzword to become a way of life in R&D, particular R&D, but can be applied in anything. What he said at that time and identified, he's saying a very simple thing. Any organization should bring new ideas from outside to inside and take these inside and outside ideas to the marketplace using internal approach or external approach. What that means? If you have an idea from inside, you know how to take it to the marketplace because this is your core business. But if you have new ideas from outside and new to the organization, you have to find a new creative way to take it to the marketplace. But the talent in that, you have to treat the internal and the external idea the same.
I have a question. Eric, do you see a lot of it in your world?
Yeah, I mean, biotech and pharma, there's a lot of this kind of approach. I think there's been adopted where, one of my former bosses, for example, heads up R&D at a company where all of their programs they go out, find small biotechs and academics and bring things in from that perspective. So there's a lot of this going on in biotech. I think it's more powerfully used in biotech from the perspective of bringing a potential asset in rather than necessarily bringing in some of the technologies. Although there's also a lot of, consulting groups or providers, contract research organizations that are bringing solutions into the field as well. I guess one question I have for you, Magdy, is it seems to me that you always need a champion on the inside. Now, it could be you in that role as the innovation, when you were in the innovation lead at Pfizer, it could have been you being the champion, but I think it actually needs to be a champ, like in the case of biotech, it needs to be a scientific champion saying, this is what we need to do and really pushing it. How did you create that champion, and how now in your current company, how do you help companies create that champion so that it actually gets the internal champion?
The short answer for your question, it depends on maturity of the innovation or technology. The more early stage, you find the scientists very attracted to because talking science. If it's more and more mature and close to the marketplace, you got the attention of the business people.
Right.
And the challenge how to kind of balance between these two. So when I started doing that, I find when I bring a new idea to the team, which this team has an R&D people, medical people, business people, immediately the business got very excited because something can bring an accelerated growth to the pipeline sooner than going to the lab and create it. But the scientists got kind of very conservative because they think about what a challenge it takes to take this idea to the marketplace. So
there's also a question of, wait, are you skipping my part of the process, right? There's also that sort of,
that's one part of it. The other part, not invented here syndrome, that I can do that. And from my working in Pfizer or my working in my consultancy, I always try give R&D, at least in this situation, an ownership. So make them feel instead of this something coming from outside, this has become yours. Because whatever coming from outside is not ready yet to the marketplace. And you as internally champion who's going to look at the glass and say, oh, now it's complete. It's not half empty, half complete. No, now I have a role to play on it. And when this model starts, with a lot of fears in R&D that I'm losing an ownership. And it became my role as a champion, external champion. No, this is adding to you because without your input, this never will see the sun. And that way, this internal champion start closing the internal gap between the business and R&D.
So it's really interesting. I think I mentioned this when we were chatting the other day, but I've spent most of my career in consumer packaged goods, grocery, retail, etc. And I'm thinking back to, for example, when I was in sort of retail and restaurant world, there was always this sort of view of, there was always a sort of like, oh, we need to create, I don't know, an app that tells you where each grocery item is in the supermarket. We need to figure out where it is and how we're going to do that, and we need to create that ourselves. And this sort of not invented here thing kind of would happen. But what's really interesting is by not using kind of external innovation, open innovation, etc., what would happen is the project would go forward, we would create something, and then the R&D folks would have to move on to something new because there's always a million projects waiting in the queue. And so we wouldn't have enough, sort of bandwidth to innovate around that, say, that app that told you where the groceries were, where each item was in the store or whatever it was. And in the meantime, you've got somebody externally, like that's all they're doing. They're just trying to make the best possible app, et cetera. And so they would, so we would end up in this situation where you kind of go, we really need to bring in something externally, even though we were resistant to it. And I think, that's sort of always been my take of, there's definitely an opportunity when you pull in things from the outside that you're just going to get more, and more means more innovation gets done. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's sort of the way I was thinking.
I do agree with you. Now, open innovation is a model how to build a partnership. And this partnership starts with one thing: what you're looking for. And if you can articulate what you're looking for, you are a winner. And when you articulate what you're looking for, it's usually a fork. If you're looking for something related to your core of business, it's very reasonable to articulate what you're looking for. But if you're looking for something completely new, you're being challenged. So when I talk to clients, what's come to me and saying, Magdy, how to accelerate growth here? I say, what you're looking for. We'll try to implement open innovation. Saying, no, I don't have money for this whole thing. Help me to find the big next one. I said, okay. The process is simple. Tell me what you're looking for. We'll go to find it. We make a deal, and it's become yours. So I ask a question. Which do you think is the most difficult phase in this process? The answer always finding this big one. And I always answer back, no. The most difficult part is describing what you're looking for.
So it's very interesting that you're mentioning it, Magdy. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, out of, say, 10 projects, right? How often do you find that big unicorn that everybody wants? It's probably very difficult, but you can nonetheless, 9 out of 10 times, get very well thought out, very good incremental, so to speak, innovation that still would allow you to scale and growth and more than hit your numbers. Is that your experience in general?
The experience in general, the more you go for early stage development, the more innovative the product is. And now, pharma business finds this very attractive model. But if you go to consumer business, most of them, they don't want to go to this early technology. And they try to get it as close to the market as possible. But try your best not to get something moving from one shelf to another, because the incremental growth would be too small. But get something kind of well recognized and modified it to meet your own consumer needs, to become something unique. And we've done that a lot, to take something similar to what's in the market, but you kind of co-development in a short period to fit more in your image as a company, your need for your specific consumer, and they become more than incremental growth. And in many cases, it can be really a breakthrough if you build one. So the idea is, when you do open innovation too, you come across other things that you don't need, but at the same time work as a catalyst for your R&D to start about something.
Right.
And in many cases, we start the project with very defined something. Once we see the outcome and say, I'm going to change my strategy now. Because you learn through this process, even if you don't find what you're looking for.
Right.
You learn from this process what else is going on. You have
So-
access to the landscape. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a question about, so you talked about pharma, like these early stage companies. I've been building a company the last couple of years, small startup, very, very small staff. Basically, you're looking at the whole company, or well, I have one partner, but the question that comes to mind for me is, how do you think about balancing the needs and, of course, the profit motive of the large company? Because there's always an imbalance, right? And it's always a bigger company in this model, or most of the time it's a big company, Pfizer, coming to a small company that's like mine, or maybe a little bit bigger. How do you balance that profit motive and needs of the big company with protecting that small company? Because I've talked to many companies and they don't want to pay a lot. They don't. They want to get the POC, and they want it to be almost free, and then they'll walk away because they ran out of cash or whatever. How do you think about that protection that the And what does the big company owe to the small company in order to help them along?
I work with small companies to help them to grow to become a big company. And once you start talking with them, the first thing is tell you, I want to go to speak to this and this and this. And the question I ask, are you ready?
Right.
And they think they are.
Right.
And that's normal because you talk to people very creative, very academic. They know everything under the sun related to this topic. But the challenge is, do you have the data to make a big company listen to you? And that is where the challenge. Because if you don't have it, I recommend that you don't even try to go and talk to anybody, because you don't want to be rejected. Even if you're rejected once and your data package getting more and more advanced, when you reach out again, you say, oh, this Eric, which we saw him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So try not to go there before you are ready. But the question, when you are ready. So being on the other side of the table became readiness. Two things. Just you have to demonstrate the quality of the data you have and your vision how to fill the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go there and acknowledge, I know I don't have all the answer, but I know how to fill these gaps. Mm-hmm. This is credibility, increase the value of your company.
So it's interesting, Magdy. In essence, not only are you offering the tech, but you are also offering a strategy on how this tech can play.
Yes, because it's very easy, particularly these days. All the days you can go to business development colleagues and they have their list of named people to contact. But these days you can contact anybody. In fact, companies have an open innovation portal. They list whatever they want. So it is not difficult to go there. The difficulty, how to go there. But going back to your question, Eric, sometimes I talk to these small companies and they said, why you don't apply open innovation? I said, hold on. What open innovation has to do with me? I said, if you find a partner, complement what you are doing, you're saving a lot of time for your company. And instead of going by yourself, you're going with a bigger package that save you the time. And you go for the big company saying, hey, this is a combination from Jeff and Eric. And here is what we got. And that's where we go. That is makes your short pathway to go to a potential partner and enhances the value of your innovation without getting into the cycle, keep going. So potentially you can reinvent the wheel.
Right.
And that's happened a lot in academia.
What if you were to look, we've talked a lot about sort of the life sciences, pharma, et cetera, but what's an example of, another industry, another company sort of outside of that where you see this kind of model working really well?
It does. You look around, actually. My focus is life science, but if you look at the other industry, they actually do that perfectly. Mm-hmm. For example, look at the auto industry and getting on the electric car.
Right.
Even before electric car, all this auto industry actually source for new paint and the new engine and the new emission and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
Even when you look at apps development, it has too many elements. Mm-hmm. More than, for a lack of better word, IT.
Oh, sure. Code pieces, absolutely.
Code pieces and knowledge.
Yeah.
How you develop an food allergy app. You have to look what is the MD saying, what's the allergist saying, what is the food ingredient saying, and you collect all this knowledge together to develop the app. So open innovation is across the board of industry. And the most important thing is how to use this tool to accelerate growth.
Right.
And the people, if you look at it as a magic bullet, you are wrong. You are unrealistic. The word accelerating here, it means you have something de-risk. Somebody already eliminate or reduce the risk. That save you a lot, but it costs you money to pay for it.
Oh,
Right.
sure. Magdy, in addition to money, I have another question, and we touched on it a little bit. It is the mindset of R&D and the process that is permissive of accepting a half-baked or preliminary, right, building block, so to speak, and then building on it. So talk to us about the importance of that.
The most important thing to succeed with this business model is it changing the culture of the organization. We call it culture of innovation. How you do that? First of all, it has to be transparency. That you guys, R&D people or business people, whoever the user or the client internally, that's what you got. And if this is went to the market, you will be awarded and recognized exactly if you got an organic growth. Because that's why it's first thing I said, when you start with an idea from outside, it has to go through your internal process exactly like the internal ideas. Some organization saying, oh, I have two process. I said that is wrong. Because if you have two process, people by nature, they're going to go for their own and they dismiss the outside.
Right.
But if you put them together, have the same success matrix, have the same resource, have everything, you have a winner. And the internal people are going to treat this as their own. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be recognized as it's your own. Having said that, you need really clear leadership sponsor. You need to understand the realistic what is open innovation bring to you.
Right.
The most important thing, don't consider open innovation as a backup. If I don't work internally, I'm going to get it from outside. No. Before you start thinking inside, said anybody thought about that?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really great point. Hey, it's the time of the episode where I let ChatGPT ask a couple questions. So would you I usually ask the question, would you prefer thought-provoking or absurd first? I don't really have a lot of good absurd questions today, but I'll ask you the question. Would you
Whatever you have, I don't know how I'm going to react to it.
All right. So the first one was, so I'll do the sort of closest to absurd first, which was, if you could invite one fictional character to an open innovation brainstorming session, who would you invite? and if you pass, you can pass if it's not a good question.
Foster Gump.
What for?
You know why?
Why?
Because for me, it's kind of a life story. Somebody was a handicap, for a lack of better word.
Yeah.
And they changed his own complete life by persisting and learning something new.
Awesome. I love it. All right. So here's my thought-provoking question is, what's the most unusual source of inspiration that you've seen in an open innovation project?
Having dinner with somebody from different country in the field.
Oh, interesting.
They bring different way of thinking. Has part of it own culture and the part of it how they think internally as an organization. And from my experience, and I met a lot of people global wide.
Mhm.
Our own culture adding something to innovation. We think within that, believe it or not.
Right.
And when I was in corporate and I work with a large organization, I encourage them to have a global innovation team. And most of the time saying, well, they don't have this resource. I said, but they serve a certain category of consumer. They think differently.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting point. It actually makes me think of a conversation I was having with someone else earlier today. This idea of, sort of bringing in diverse perspectives
Yes.
and diverse thinking and whatever is so important, because people's different contexts and cultures and so
Yes.
forth give them
Yes.
a different way to think. I like that.
Yes.
That's a great answer.
We,
So,
once we having Coke with a colleague from from other country, and he said this Coke is not sweet enough. I said why? Because said we have it home is very sweet. I said, this isn't too much sweet. He said, but people use it as nutrition there, and you learn something new that didn't click in my mind at that time. Can this beverage actually play as a nutrition source?
right.
And you can build in that a lot of.
Right. You think differently. How do you,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be sweetener. It can be anything else.
right.
It's very interesting to me that this is actually the first time I think of how open innovation is so much bigger than a molecule or a building block, that it has a strategic perspective, both in, of course, a business strategic perspective, right? Because we attach the numbers to it, but it's also a strategy into how this fits into a bigger work stream,
Yes.
and also a diverse point of view that actually probably permits sometimes to find the answer that just was like, in front of my very eyes and I just couldn't see it because we're all tunnel vision, right?
Yes. Yes, that's true, because it doesn't only bring, you have to look at innovation more than technology. Put the technical piece of innovation aside, but think about it. What else is this innovation can bring to me? Bring you bigger opportunity to understand where it's coming from, and give you also opportunities how to cooperate with somebody else to take this to the marketplace, which is not an easy, because sometimes if you're dealing with people from the same culture, that's one thing. If you have an innovation coming from different part of the world, you have to keep in mind when you communicate with your potential partner, this is different in culture. And believe me, is unique experience.
So one question I have is, when you're dealing with open source, in your experience, Magdy, do you generally, would you say that the most of the time the larger organization is looking for something specific, when you were in your role at Pfizer, and then you would go out and look for people who were providing that or could potentially or had potential to provide that? Or was it the other way around, where you had companies coming to you with something that you didn't even know you needed, and once you saw it, you're like, yes, we need to start thinking about this? Is there a balance between those, or is it really generally one or the other direction?
I faced the two things. I usually encourage the people reach out to me, even in my previous job and now as a client. Tell me what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I try to put a frame of work. I call it target opportunity profile. How the best thing in your mind looks like. But when I do scouting, I have this target, but I do that range. I call it surrounding of the target.
Mm-hmm.
So you attract more. Why I have this? People call this scouting. I like to call it hunting,
Mm-hmm.
because the hunting has more human piece,
Mm.
and you can look and see the things by your eyes And by the time you develop knowledge, yeah, that's better than that. But also this target opportunity profile provide you with two things. Become like contract between you as a client and the opportunity, so you know what you're looking for. And they help you inside your organization because you can avoid human bias. Because sometimes you see something and fall in love with it, and we don't know why. But if you have matrix, you can say, yeah, I love it, but did not fit.
Right.
So I do both of them,
Yep.
but I always, even if it's not defined, at least I would like to have a feeling, because when I talk to people, I kind of build something in my mind. It's different than crowdsourcing.
Right.
Crowdsourcing, you go outside, you put whatever you want, and you got whatever you got.
Right.
And I call it that you have to spend a lot of time to de-weed, de-risk, to get these things. But the more you kind of have your scout looking around with some frame of work, help you to look, okay, that's close enough, that's far enough, but interested. And that's where you got actually breakthrough.
So, Magdy, this has been a fantastic conversation. As promised, we have flown through another half-hour episode, so we're just over that.
Goes fast.
It goes fast. It really does. So, as you know, we go around and ask everybody to leave the audience with one thing, and we always make our guests go first. So, what's one thing you'd like to either bring back up or something through a new idea you want to throw into the conversation?
I would like to leave you with a message that think about open innovation as a way of life, not just a small project. And the more you commit to it, the more you see the fruits out of it. Don't use it as something, okay, I'll come back to it when I have time.
Yeah.
Because you will be missing a lot in accelerating growth inside your organization. Don't be scared of process, because you don't have to implement the whole process.
Right.
You can focus in area, it depends on the size of your company, organization, and the culture, etc., etc. But try to benefit from what's out there before you reinvent the wheel.
I think that's terrific. So before I give my one thing, Magdy, what is the best way for people to connect with you, reach you, find you?
The best way, either you find me in LinkedIn with my name, or
Awesome.
you can go to my website, Questio Global Partners, or Questio GP, QUAESTIOGP.com.
Awesome.
But you find my name all over anyway.
Perfect. Well, so I'm going to build on something you said, which is, I think what you were just talking about, this idea of making that open innovation not a sort of fallback last ditch thing, but making it really part of the process and an assumption of the process of this is how we're going to move faster, is also an antidote to that not invented here
Yes.
kind of thinking that I think happens so often, and frankly, it slows people down, but also leads to suboptimal solutions to the problem, because you're basically saying, you have a company that has, collected a group of people that have a ton of expertise, but they don't have a ton of expertise in everything. And you're basically expecting them to come up with the best solution when there might be somebody else out there who just has a more knowledge or more thought, more visibility and can
Right.
bring something to the table. So I think that's really important. And I will pass it over to Elena.
Yeah, I would build on that. I think the world is becoming more specialized in everything we do all across and more niche. And in the world that's becoming more niche, that openness to strategic openness, business openness, organizational openness, right? To understand that I'm going to source my building blocks elsewhere. It's critical for the businesses that want to scale.
Yes.
So, and my one thing, and I actually have two things written down here, so I'll make it two things. One is this concept Magdy, that you mentioned, that this is really about a culture, a way of life, a mindset. I think that's key. Like, you can't just tack it on as a backup plan. And I've seen that, I latch onto that concept because I've seen that happen too many times, where the innovative thing is the backup plan, and that doesn't work out for, it's just wasted money on both sides and wasted time. And then the other piece that I was going to mention is this, that you brought up a couple times, this concept of this need to really understand, even if you're coming with something that is totally innovative, new, and that the group that you're pitching to, as the smaller organization, even if it's not something that they already have in mind, that you need to understand how it's going to fit in. You need to understand how that actually meets a need of theirs in order for this kind of innovation relationship to work. So with that, this was, again, it's always so fast, and it's great to have you on. And thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you, Magdy.
Take care.